to gonna get this meeting underway. Yeah, we're talking taper and tactics of kind of specifically stage racing. But again, a lot of the fundamentals of what we're talking about today apply to single day racing. It's just again, majority of people that might be on this Zoom. They're going to be doing a stage race. And, specifically, there's a few kind of big ones in the BC area: BC Bike Race, Single Track Six, Gravel Royale, things of that nature. So, it might be a bit of a mix of you guys. But again, a lot of these fundamentals that we're going to talk about today apply. And I think, the main takeaway that, I want people to leave this meeting with is the idea that basically you're not going to give away your race before it even starts, and you're not going to give away your race in the first, like, kind of 1, 2, 3 days. And what I'll say, in terms of, I obviously, for people that maybe don't know or are new to these kind of calls and stuff, I raced professionally for kind of 15 years. Triathlon was my first start, and kind of 7 years national team there. And then switched over to doing bike racing and BC Bike Race and Trans Rockies were kind of the race series I keyed in on. And ultimately, I learned a lot, racing at the top end of those races. And you kind of see how to take a professional approach over those 15 years. You just kind of polish. And then kind of focusing in on now that I'm, not racing professionally anymore, and I'm kind of more focusing in on the coaching side of things. I've got a completely different perspective of the middle of the race and the back end of the race. And working with clients over the years and seeing what works and, again, the easy mistakes that we can avoid. So that's really the takeaways of today. And so, yeah. And some housekeeping stuff. If you have questions and stuff, like, we're a relatively small group. Unmute yourself, ask the question, put it in the chat. I'll do my best to kind of like be watching that chat area. I don't want people to forget their question or whatever. If it, kind of comes to your mind, just blurt it out or put it in the chat. And we will have a questions bit at the end, if something sparked along the way. Um, and yeah, so, okay. Slide number one. What is tapering? Simplistically, it's, a gradual reduction in training volume, before race week. How many days out? It can kind of depend. And again, like, depends on what's going on in your life. Preference for me is 12 to 10 days out from an event. And that's kind of why we did this Zoom on this kind of Fridays. We're 10 days out from BCBR, and we're a few more days out from things like Single Track Six and other races and stuff. So it's a good time to be thinking about this stuff because a lot of you are either started tapering or you're about to taper. Um, so kind of two things happen when we train. If we think of these lines that move, there's two kind of major lines. You have your line of fitness, and you have a line of fatigue. As you get fitter, your fitness is going to increase. But to build that fitness, you're going to be adding fatigue to the body. So consistently, these lines are interchanging themselves throughout your training cycle. You have a recovery day, it's going to bring down your fatigue levels, while trying to keep your fitness, but it will as well dip your fitness level. So it's kind of this stair-stepping approach, how we want to go about kind of building that. And ultimately, we want to reduce fatigue while maintaining fitness as we come to a taper. And so, how are we going to do that? It's through reducing training volume, but keeping training intensity. This is, I think, the thing that people miss the most is A, they get nervous about their race and they panic train. And a blanket statement I like to say to everybody right off the bat is that you're not going to get any fitter in this 10 days prior to your race. All you're going to do is build more fatigue if you overtrain. So that's like blanket statement, like period, exclamation point, you will kind of give away your race if you don't recover and kind of taper. But as well, if you say just only rest and you're not doing any of these bits of high intensity at short durations with increased rest between intervals, uh, you as well will find yourself feeling flat if you're not doing that. So you kind of will like not be keeping up with your fast twitch muscle fiber. Um, you'll get really like sore. You'll feel really like your mobility goes down. So there is a level of we want to keep moving the body. We want to keep all these kind of frequency to training that we've been doing with just some increased rest days, increased, again, the intervals are very small, short. The main sets are super short. It's just we want to keep the body ticking. Um, so does that make sense? Anyone have any burning questions on that? And we'll kind of get into more details on stuff. So again, just if something comes up, just feel free to put it in the chat. So kind of these tapering tips, maintaining intensity with shorter intervals. So, if you got pen and paper down and you are not kind of following a plan or whatever, and you want some ideas, like one of my go-to taper sets is to go out for an hour or 90-minute ride. And within that ride, I'm going to do basically 3 minutes at high, or sorry, 3 times 2 minutes at high intensity, kind of that like higher zone four. Again, it's a 2 minute interval, it's super short and I'm going to take 5 minutes recovery between before I do another one of it. The idea there is that I'm not going into VO2 max where, I'm kind of really charging. I'm kind of just going at that really high point end race pace. And ultimately, I'm giving my body time over that 5 minutes to process some of the lactate that I am creating through that higher interval. And that gives me an opportunity to not build as much lactate and be able to then kind of charge at the next rep. So the importance there is really spacing out those quality interval pieces. But again, that's just one example of a multitude of different workouts that you can do that will kind of offer you out that ability to kind of again fast twitch muscle fiber activation without building copious amounts of fatigue. And again, we really want to be reducing our durations of exercise. So again, 10 days out from the race, we don't need to really be doing any big long rides anymore. That foundation should have already been built. And it's one of those things, if you're kind of in this area where you're like, well, I didn't do that, it's kind of like, okay, you got to make the best of what you've got. And ultimately, I go back to that blanket statement. You will not get fitter 10 days out from your race. You only add fatigue that will make it harder to do what you're going to do. So if you don't have that base fitness, you're on a hope and a prayer, and you've got to have a good taper. Um, so things that you can do though, increase your sleep. So again, if we're reducing our training hours, we're reducing some load, let's take that time that we normally would carve out to doing training and let's get sleep. Get a nap in, maybe it's getting to bed a half hour earlier. Again, screen time is always going to be something that we want to reduce. Hydrate, and hydration, like as well. This is the time as we start thinking about our carbo load. And again, you can look, and maybe I'll post this at some point. Some of the talks we've done with Sierra, who's the nutritionist that I have with Mad Endurance. She's talked a lot about, how to increase your carb intake. And it especially matters as we get closer to the race, kind of specifically in that, 4 day window in. You want to be increasing, but along the way right now, like we want to be eating really well. We want to be sleeping. We want to be getting good hydration. We don't want to be getting stretches where we're dehydrated, hungry, all that kind of stuff. Like we're just trying to tune the body the best way possible. Um, and so, another one. I know like training is a super social event, and there's lots of group rides and things like that. When you're tapering, group rides provide lots of in, like kind of informal hard efforts. You can there's unpredictability to it on what it's going to be. So my thing is the closer I get to a race, unless someone's on the exact same narrative of me, I don't want to ride with them because I don't want to get into an awkward like, oh, I don't want to go that hard and stuff like that. So again, I would ride to what I needed to do. As well, like the no new trails. That's one that I think, at this time as you get closer to your race, like, yeah, you've put a lot of work in and you don't want to find yourself hitting the ground. New trails, obviously right before a race. I would say it's not really going to be a value add. I'm big on you got to keep your technical riding up and keep your cornering fluidity and flow going. But do it on trails that like the back of your hand, and get those kind of good sensations and good vibes. Another big one, it doesn't really have as much to do with training, but this is the time. Get your bike dialed. Get new brake pads on. Like to me, as a coach, it's unacceptable if an athlete shows up to a race and all of a sudden 2 days in needs new brake pads because those brake pads need to be bedded in and all this stuff. Like have your bike sorted. Fresh rubber that has a few rides on it so you know it's sealed, you know it's good. Don't be changing like bars and different stuff like that. Don't get on a brand new bike the week before the race. Like this is stuff that should have been done months ago. So major thing here, though, what I will say is there are some changes you're gonna make to your bike that are race specific things. So again, maybe it is the tire choice that we want to use for BC Bike Race, and probably two options. Right now, the summer we're having in BC is not what we've seen the last few years. It's more in a realm of kind of a wetter, colder season. So we might see our first wet BC bike race in a long time. Again, it also could change and go blazing hot. But let's kind of discuss some tire choice options. So, like, kind of having a dry and a rain. I don't think you need to get super fancy. Like, yeah, some of the pro guys have lots of option. And also, again, like, ride with what you know. Don't ride a brand new tire that you have no idea how it's going to perform. Again, I tell you, like guys like Jeff Kabush who do a lot of R&D for Maxxis, he knows what he's riding, and when he prototypes something, he had input on what was built to that tire. So he knows what he's going to get, and he knows what he's going to ride, and ultimately he has a skill level that is quite high. In terms of, again, his ability to ride on Aspens through BC Bike Race may not be what someone else has. So again, these are things that we want to be thinking about. So no major changes. One other thing I will say of, again, a good change that you might think, come down a chainring size. Maybe you're pushing around a 34 chainring on your Eagle kind of 50, 1050 cassette in maybe it's Ontario or somewhere more flat. My invitation to you is to go down to a 32. I raced professionally on a 34, and that's when I had like, an FTP of, kind of 420 watts for 20 minutes. I was pushing a 34 ring. In flatter places, sure, I would use a 36 ring. But BC Bike Race, like that's the level. So don't think you need to push the same kind of gearing that the pros will push. Use like a 32 ring, use a 30 ring or a 28. Like think about where you're currently at and think about what you're gonna do. So again, big recommendation is come down in that chainring size. You're racing for 7 days. Residual fatigue is going to be a big thing. And ultimately start using it kind of through your taper. So that way, you know the equipment works. You know, like you're not having any issues with the drivetrain. If you don't know what you're doing, go to a bike shop.
20 FTP.
So a good question here in the chat from Chad is speaking about, reconning the course. Obviously, a lot of it's
50.
going to be new trails for
50.
you guys. So yeah, like I mean, the reality is with BC Bike Race, unless you did like a complete separate trip earlier in the spring, it's impossible to pre-ride it. And obviously, like they also are going to make changes based on what happens. Like BC Bike Race always has to, they've got a lot going on, and other, single track six, no different. They're going to have to always kind of balance what's happening. The Trail Association may say, oh, that trail's closed now. You got to find a different way. Um, I'm big on don't show up if you're like 3 days out and be like, I'm gonna ride all this stuff. Or even, if you're a week out, stick to a good taper. Don't get caught into like, oh, I need to ride the course because I need to see it. My opinion, I've traveled, for racing across the world where, it's like I flew in 2 days before an event from another race and I didn't have time to see any of the course. It's just I was so prioritized on recovering from travel, recovering from the last race, doing good taper, getting ready for the race. And my view is that a fresh body is better than a tired body with a brain that knows what's coming up. Ultimately, like everyone's been mountain biking enough to know when they get that spidey sense that they're about to go onto some terrain that maybe is above their pay grade, and you're going to walk it and kind of fastly move your bike through that section. The course does a great job. Like all these races do a great job of designating either blocking off super rowdy lines. Like there's going to be no mandatory airs, there's going to be no mandatory drops. Anything that they'll send you down will roll. And I can't reiterate that enough. Again, like if you go on a stupid line, all of a sudden, yeah, you might go over the bars. I'm not guaranteeing anything, but for in most part, everything that they'll do if you pick the good line will roll, and that's where again sometimes it is worth taking that extra sec to look at something as you're kind of like racing even. And again, like it's just there's this part to this BC bike race and single track six, and that it's like an adventure. And again, like this is where in your off season you're working, you should be working on progressing your riding. But yeah, I wouldn't try to progress it the week before the race. It's like you're gonna kind of get through the race, and kind of take a peek at things. So yeah, hopefully that somewhat answers your question there. Oops, what happened here? What did I do? There we go. Um, let me just move this so I can read my screen. Okay, core race skills for BC bike race. So this kind of comes into what I was saying. Line choice and vision. We're close to racing starting, but again, these good habits, you can always be working on them and always be thinking about it. People get way too caught into focusing on kind of what's right at their front tire. Um, and you should really be kind of thinking about looking down the trail. What you're currently riding should have already been processed and out the back of your head, and you're preparing for what's next. Obviously, we hear the word flow a lot in bike racing, and that is something that we really want to be kind of thinking about through the race. Is am I flowing? Or am I riding so hard that I'm like dabbing, I'm making mistakes, I'm blowing corners where I'm coming in too fast, having to jam up the brakes? Ultimately, all those things are wasted energy. That's the key there. So by looking ahead and not down, we get chance to like check what gear we need to be in, which is probably the biggest one. And again, you're not going to have pre-ridden most of this stuff, so you have to kind of go a bit on what am I seeing ahead of me in terms of the topography. And don't get me wrong, every now and then we all get caught out and you hit a wall that you didn't expect. You thought the trail was maybe going to mosey another way and it goes straight up. those are just areas where, a lot of these new drivetrains are electronic and you can dump a lot of gears really fast. If you're on that transmission group set, it's meant to be pedaled under load. So yes, it's slower, but you can keep cranking your crank while you're shifting. Again, as long as your bike's set up well. So cornering, speed control, like kind of coming back into that thing of like, if you see a big corners coming up that's not a berm and it's flat, like there's no point in pedaling like a fiend into it because you're just going to dump a bunch of brake and potentially go down. So again, find that flow. Think of your body position. Again, hips kind of in the direction in which you want to go. Obviously, I'm kind of going to be quick on these because we're not in person, kind of being able to actually practice stuff. But climbing, traction management, like, and I'll say for climbing and stage racing, like, sit your butt on the seat as much as possible. Anytime you feel like getting out of the saddle, you should probably sit back down and shift down a gear. We're talking about racing for days on end. Um, every time you get out of the saddle, think of it as a little match that you're burning. And I can promise you by the end of the week, midweek, even within the stage, you can all of a sudden get cramping going. So don't get caught into like, oh, I need to get out of the saddle. Unless you're sprinting to the finish line to win or to put time on a competitor, sit down, pedal, good rotations, get your shoulders down away from your ears, like get relaxed in the upper body, and try to keep that heart rate down and keep basically good traction. And yeah, just really avoid getting out of the saddle. There is going to be terrain that, yeah, you're not going to be able to sit down. But if you're on, a forest service road climbing up to the next bit of single track, that's your invitation to stay seated, good pedal rotation, and good cadence. Don't mash. If you can shift and go to a higher RPM, I'm not sitting and saying like you should soft pedal and not have the wattage. Like ride the wattage to what you're trained to do, or the rhythm or the heart rate zone, but just up that RPM. Don't have it be from mashing because again, that's gonna come to haunt you later. Um, so descending, commit to lines, break before features. Like these are two things that can kind of save us. One, we don't want to be mocking into features that we have no idea what they are. Pro, amateur, whatever. Like I can promise you, I've descended down with some of the best riders that have, come to BC Bike Race and Trans Rockies and stuff. No one's blindly like slaying it down. Like, yes, we take some confidence in that, again, we know there's going to be no mandatory errors unless you seek it out and it's going to be marked that way. There's going to be no like big gap jumps that like you have to make. Again, it would be signed. And again, a lot of times these races, they're not even going to put them in. There's usually X's across. So again, that's a big one. And then commit to once you're in it. A lot of the gnarlier crashes I've seen is when panic ensues on it's like, well, you're going down that line, and then people just grab brake, and then, front brake is usually the big caveat to this, and they go over the bars and they slam really hard. Verse, if you just said, well, I'm in it now and I just ride it out and hold it like it's a rodeo, you might actually not get as hurt in the end. So again, but the bigger arching thing to all of this is like if you're getting into terrain that feels well above what you're comfortable riding, just have a stop, have a look, and maybe you say, you know what? And my vote is once your feet are off the bike in any race situation, just walk the feature, get back on your bike and get going. Um, so yeah, kind of again, technical features like logs, roots, drops, like again, they're going to be all rollable stuff. Ride smooth, not fast. That expression, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Like in certain terrain, that really does pay true. Okay. So yeah, if there's any questions there, whatever, let me know. But yeah. So race day execution. Probably this kind of comes in a bit to like most people ask, like, what the hell should I do for a warm up? Like, I'm racing for 7 days. Like, I don't think you need monster warm-ups when you're especially when we have races that there's transit time to where the race actually starts, where it's called off the clock, where you kind of rolling at your own pace. And until you hit actual timing that you're not recorded, like those are an area where it's like I'm gonna warm up within that time because obviously I want to shorten what I have to actually do when applicable. And again, if you're racing right from a start line, well, then yeah, you need to be primed and ready to go. Major things that I suggest is you should, a lot of times where we start, we're in these big parks and you kind of have to make these kind of awkward moves to get out. There can be things like little bullard posts that don't allow vehicles into parks and stuff that you got to navigate. My thing is take a professional approach. A pro athlete is going to figure out every single potential obstacle. So as they're coming to it, I don't need to know someone tell me that it's there. I already know it's there. I know what it's going to look like. I'm going to have no surprise. So if we're going to talk about reviewing anything before a race, those are what I suggest reviewing. It's high. You're at the most people around you. You're at the most chance of having an incident with your bike. So those are areas where I heavily suggest know what's coming, know how to get around it, and think about what your plan would be, exit strategies if all of a sudden you got pinched in on something. Um, but yeah, so pre-ride those starts again, and your warm up, like 15 minutes, 20 minutes max, little prime within. Kind of like I sometimes will do a 4 minute prime where I start from zone two and go to zone five. Sometimes I do 2 by 2 minutes with a minute recovery in between. It's again, it's not meant to be super like pointed. It's meant to be you tuning into your body and getting an idea of where you're at. Because there's some days where I would do those primes and I'd be like, shit, I'm tired. And I know I'm going to be on the back foot in this race. So I need to be defensive and think about racing defensively. And there's other days where I would do the prime and I would be like, man, I'm chomping at the bit. I feel good. Today's the day I'm launching an attack right out in the first bit because I feel good and I want to give it. That's where you build those ideas. And again, we're talking about stage racing, 7 days. Like to think that you're going to be good over those 7 days every single day, it's not going to happen. You're going to have a day where you wake up and you'll be like, I don't want to ride. Your butt's going to hurt. Your hands are tired from doing technical single track and you're mentally tired, but you got to like tune into your body and be like, okay, maybe today's a day that I just need to ride smooth, ride smart, not lose any time to my competitors. And maybe I need to do more recovery stuff for the next day, and that will maybe be the day I get on it a bit. So yeah, stay calm in the start zone. Again, no need to sprint. Like you don't need to be easy to be passed, like giving away positions. But there's no need to be getting out of the saddle and like going all crazy. Like it's not the UCI World Cup where you're trying to get ahead of Christopher Blevins. Um, you know, you want to keep yourself safe here. Like you don't want to pop a collarbone in the start zone. Um, just another question here coming up. So some are racing in teams, perhaps discuss team dynamic. Oops. Yeah, so team dynamic, like in terms of like a pair, I would imagine. Like I think BC Bike Race, you have to finish together and stuff. So really you're kind of just working off and I mean don't take offense by it, but the weaker link. Your person of lesser fitness, however you want to say it. You're gonna work off of them. If you're the person with higher fitness and maybe you're a better technical rider, you're just trying to support and help facilitate your partner getting through whatever. And maybe it's one person's more technical and one person's better fitness. And so you're just going to work to each other's strengths to effectively move yourself through the course as fast as possible. Um, so that's kind of what I would say to it there in terms of like dynamics. Like you get a chance to have a buddy to work yourself of like make sure you're having nutrition and whatnot. And in reality, like to speak to these stage races, kind of by day two, day three, you'll know who your people are. So even if you're racing as an individual, you'll kind of be around the same, like, 15, 20 riders. And you'll get to know them pretty good. So that's the one thing. Also think about how you show up on day one. If you're like a super like ego, kind of being a prick and like, oh, I need to get around you, move, get out of my way. Like, chill out. It's mountain biking. Like, everyone wants everyone to have a good race, in my opinion. Like be your best self because you're going to be around those people whether you think you're not or whatever, like, and be courteous to one another out there. So yeah, that's what I'll say to that. Hopefully that answers your question. If you have a more specific line to it, let me know. But yeah, ride your own pace early. So this is probably the biggest thing and the biggest mistake that I see from even clients that I've coached to people in the race. No matter how much I beat this in, like it's kind of gonna happen a bit that on day one and two, you're probably gonna go a little bit deep. But I'm just gonna say it now, so maybe you don't go as deep, but ride your own pace. If you go and do something that is well out of your training realm and you're holding wattage or a heart rate zone that you normally have not, you will pay for it later in the race. Later in that day, maybe, later in the week. So again, we're not doing a single day race. This is 7 days of riding or 6 days of riding, or whatever your stage race is. You need to be prepared. Um, and you need to be okay with letting certain people go because I promise you they'll come back. Like going from the last 2 years, I've kind of soft pedaled the race and kind of just done my own thing. And it's amazing to see. I'm going the exact same pace, like zone two throughout the whole thing. And the difference in people I saw from day one to the last day was astounding to me. So I really can't stress enough because A, if you're riding your own pace, you're likely not going to crash. You're likely not going to forget to drink and eat consistently. You're likely gonna, kind of find yourself in the back end of the week just passing people and being way in front. And again, I say that through when I wasn't really racing it and I was just pedaling it to kind of learn more about the event, especially in that mid to end of the race. That was what I think really stood out to me is how many people kind of give away their race in the first 2 days. Um, and so again, coming back to like eat and drink consistently, like I get it, we're mountain biking. It's sometimes not convenient to get calories in. If you're someone who can't take one hand off the bar, like wear a hydro pack and get that straw in your mouth however you can. Like there's no excuse to not be fueling. Like the idea that you go an hour without putting something in your body, again, that's signing your own death certificate in this race. If you're not putting gasoline in the kind of vehicle that you are, you're gonna blow up and you're gonna run out of fuel and you're not gonna go. You're gonna be stuck at an aid station with a glazed look over your face, and you're gonna be drinking pickle juice and wishing that you could get going again. So by the time you recognize that you've not eaten or drank enough, it's kind of too late. So again, get on it early and stay on it. Any chance that you're off single track, on double track, climbing, whatever, those are opportunities to be pounding fuel. And again, broad brushstrokes, like we want like kind of that 3 to 400 calories an hour. So let that sink in, 3 to 400 calories an hour. And again, going back to previous sessions we've done with Sierra and whatnot, like you do have to train your gut for this. You can't just expect that on race day you're going to be able to handle all those kind of calories. So um, that's something that again you want to be doing in your training. And in, maybe this is again your kind of thinking about what you could do better for next year and all this stuff. But ultimately, like now, you still have some opportunity to practice getting in more nutrition. So Jamie has a question. Can you talk about salt intake? It is super dependent on the individual. Um, and so most like I use the brand Morton's a lot. I think Scratch has a high carb mix that's pretty good as well. I've found with Morton, like I did a Gatorade sweat test like many years ago and found out I'm a high sodium sweater. A good indication without doing a fancy lab test to figure that out is if you ride in a hot climate and you notice white salt stains all over your kit, you can bet that you're a high sodium sweater. So what you're going to want to do with that is you are going to want to have salt additives. You're going to salt your food, like little things like that, because you are sweating at a higher salt rate than someone else. But again, that's very independent. But what I've found is once I started using Morton's, I didn't have to supplement my drinks anymore. Those work for me. And again, like if you go to Mad Endurance YouTube, we've got like videos of Sierra's talk where it goes really in depth. So if you really want to deep dive on any of the nutrition stuff, it's there. But again, like I would say, is we're not looking to change anything drastically. Coming back to earlier slide, so it is kind of like what you've been doing for nutrition. We want to keep it up. Unless again, if your literal thing is like I've done nothing for nutrition, I bring water in a bottle, well then yeah, do something different because that I can tell you will end badly. Um, Coming back to another kind of point I made earlier, communicate with the riders around you. This is the one thing again, I'll say it again is like be nice, be courteous for passing and being passed. Like on both ends of the spectrum. Like the more that we kind of like again have a general like idea that there is no such thing as really drafting in mountain biking for the most part. The true drafting in mountain biking is called following lines. So if someone's better than you and they want by, it's advantageous for you to let them by and get on their wheel. Like even in pro racing, I viewed it as like, hey, we're sitting in fourth and fifth in the race right now, and this person's faster, riding better lines. I'm gonna let them by and I'm gonna follow lines, and maybe we're gonna actually move up to catching, kind of getting into the podium of the race. So these are kind of again growth mindset. Think, bigger, think better, and just don't be someone who kind of gatekeeps on a trail. Like that sucks. And it also sucks if you're pressuring someone and and they know there's not a safe place to turn off. Like asking to pass someone on a major feature, unacceptable in my eyes. Like get your pass done way sooner. And don't get me wrong, you will run into someone who's being a bit of an arse and, you know, you catch more flies with honey. Like, vinegar on vinegar isn't going to be better either. So, some people just suck and that's the way it is. But anyone who did this call, now you know my thoughts on it. And speaking specifically to men and female riders, like there are going to be fast female riders. Don't let your ego and your pride get in the way. I've been passed and chicked as they call it by female riders before. I'm sure as shit not gonna like hold them up or whatever. Like there are some fast women in this race. Move out of their way. Um, okay, I get beat by women all the time. Yeah, so it happens. There's incredible talent. So, yeah, there's just no excuse to be a gatekeeper on the trail. So, okay, mental preparation. So this is kind of stuff that, as we talk about, we have more time in terms of our like we're not training as much, so we've got more time to like kind of be off the bike or out of the gym, whatever. We have time to think about stuff. We have time to think about problems we may run into. And the more you visualize things, the more when they become reality, you actually kind of know what to do. I can't tell you how many times I've like visualized like, oh, if I got a flat right now, how quick would I change it? What's my first step and how, like, based on my race setup, where all my flat kit stuff was, how would I accomplish doing that? I would think about it, and sometimes I would actually do it. So these are things to think about. Also thinking about, what happens if I get to that super gnarly section and I'm like a little bit freaked? What am I going to do? Like if you pre-visualize it, pre-think it, it's going to be more automatic when, in a race, like, yeah, your frontal cortex is kind of going to go in and out. You're going to sometimes be doing some things that you shouldn't, because your frontal cortex is kind of turned off. Um, I think that again, like I want people in racing to keep situational awareness best they can. But the more that we visualize stuff prior to the race, the more we visualize making good turns, riding clean through tech sections, it's gonna happen for you. The more you dread and think, oh, I hope this doesn't like, hope I don't come into some terrain that I'm not comfortable with, like then you are gonna kind of get yourself spooked and you're gonna make weird kind of decisions. Um, so visualize stuff, visualize the starts of the race going well and how you want it to feel. Visualize, you climbing strong and powerful with like good cadence. And visualize you getting your nutrition in and visualize what your aid station looks like in terms of like, I've already pre-planned of like, I'm going to come up to the aid station. I know exactly what I'm going to get and what I'm going to do, and I'm going to get going again because that's free time. We don't want to be wasting time um, around. And so, kind of bringing into the next point is expect the highs and the lows. You're going to have awesome moments in this race where, you're going to do this super cool feature. Someone behind you is going to be like cheering you on, and it's going to feel awesome. And there is going to be the tough bits of the race where you've been climbing, feels like forever, feels like you've done no descending. All you've done is climbing all day, and it's going to be hard. And ultimately, what I'll say is like when the highs get high, don't, get too high on yourself because that leads into forgetting to eat and drink. Like, I kid you not, if you're feeling like a rock star, a lot of people start not putting calories in. Um, so, you should be faintly like feeling like, oh, I might throw up if I have another bite, but like that's a good place to be. Don't obviously throw up, but right to the line. And then in terms of the lows, that is an opportunity where it's like when I found myself racing, and sometimes I'd be leading a race, and there's prize money on the line or whatever, and I would get grumpy and start questioning my life decisions on like, why do I do this on Saturday mornings? And this is stupid. It was usually because it was time for me to have some calories and drink. And I can't tell you how many times it was like that was exactly it. Once I had some calories in, it's like back on laser focus. I love what I'm doing, and away you go. So expect the highs and lows. Again, because if you sit and think it's just going to be all sunshine and rainbows the whole way, you'll be really disappointed when it starts getting sucky, and it will. And so, okay, like I talked a little bit about the summer we're currently having, and again, for the last 2 summers, we've had these blazing hot summers from kind of like June on. This year we've had one heat wave, and it is, I would think it's a little bit unseasonably cold. Like currently in Whistler, it's, I think about 14 degrees and rain. So yeah, unfortunately, you're probably gonna have a suitcase that's gonna be a little bit too heavy for Air Canada. But you do want to have good kit, like have a rain cape, have arm warmers, leg warmers, gloves, full, like I think you should be wearing gloves all the time. Um, Lenses for your sunglasses, like highlight lenses in terms of like when it's sunny, low light lenses. Prepare for mechanicals. Just expect lots of different conditions. Have that extra set of rain tires so you have better grip and control. Like the one nice thing about BC is our soil compound is not like, other places in Canada, like towards the east, that's very clay based in other parts of the world. We have, especially on the island, good grippy soil when wet. The thing that isn't obviously very grippy is the roots. But even a lot of the rocks will grip while wet. The granite is porous and you get good bite to it. So yeah, like, it's not the end of the world if we end up having a rainy BCBR. But again, we want to be prepared for it. And you got to kind of make sure you've got the gear to be warm. One year at BC Bike Race, we were racing and the start was at Apex Mountain, and I want to say the start line temp was 2 degrees. I was in knee warmers, arm warmers, had a big jacket on for my warm up and stripped it off right before the race. And I think the high on that day was like 11 degrees. So it was a cold start. Um, yeah, so another one is focus on the effort and not the result. Again, you're gonna be interacting with lots of different riders, and it's important to like understand that, you know, you've trained, you've worked hard to do this. Don't get hung up on all of a sudden some weird like results based thing because you like look at day one results and then you start going, oh, now I want to do this or whatever. Like personally, like yes, when I did BC bike race, my goal was to like do as best as I could, which ultimately was always trying to win. And ultimately, I only ever got as good as being seventh. I think literally I was seventh like 2 or 3 years in a row. Um, but ultimately, while doing the race, like I never worried about, oh, well, I'm not winning, so I don't want to try. It's like, okay, there's like five guys who are like really good, and I'm racing with this other guy for sixth place now. I'm just like focused on my effort, and I'm not too worried about the result. And I mean, to even blow it out further, like one of the years, one of the riders who had won BC bike race years previous was Felix, and he had a really bad over the handlebars crash on the last stage. All of us that kind of came and saw him, we all stopped. Like the race doesn't matter. It's again focusing on taking care of that person. And that's a similar thing. Like the race is going to give you back time. So yeah, take care of like people out there when you see them and stuff. But ultimately, again, it kind of just comes to that mentality of like enjoy the journey, enjoy like you'll kick yourself if like at the end of it you're like, oh, I was just so fixated on my results all the time that I didn't enjoy just the fact that like you made it. Like you're here, you're racing like one of them like some of the most iconic stage races live in Canada, and you get to race it. So that's a thing. Don't kind of get so detached from the journey that you're on, because I would say there's times in my racing that I really look back now and think, man, I was way too fixated on sometimes the wrong stuff. And that's again saying it as someone who is racing professionally for a living. Um, so yeah, enjoy the journey you're on. Okay, checklists. So yeah, final race week checklist. Like, okay, bike tuned and tested. Like that's a big one. I can't tell you how many times a mechanic has made a mistake with my bike. I know they don't mean to, but checking and knowing and verifying your own stuff. It's not good enough to be like, well, someone else did it, so it should be good. Check it, make sure. Sometimes you get tubeless tires put on and you end up having a slow leak, and you maybe need to add more sealant. I want to figure that out 3 days prior to the race, not the morning of. Nutrition plan, buy the stuff you need, make sure you have it so you don't get into one of these things where all of a sudden you're in Victoria and you can't find the perfect gel that you like. Get it now, get it sorted, get it labeled in a bag. Um, get your sleep dialed in. Now's the time to start. It's going to be hard sleeping through the stage race. Like that's just the reality. You really got to kind of work to wind yourself down after racing. But yeah, get your sleep dialed in now. Ideally, hopefully you have a job that facilitates that and you don't have to work nights and stuff. But also if you could swap your nights, get rid of your night shifts or whatever, that will pay you off quite well. And yeah, so kind of coming back to that all conditions, like get your gear packed, start laying out like here's my rain kit, here's my cold weather warm up kit. Um, kind of get all that stuff packed and labeled. Here's my tools, here's my flat kit, here's my extra tires. I imagine most people have all their logistics confirmed, travel and lodging and stuff. Obviously, there's some stuff you can just fly by night, like you can figure out where to eat kind of based on what you feel like. Because kind of like, stage race, you'll get cravings. Like literally in the middle of the race, you'll start thinking about like, man, I can't wait to be done racing so I can eat like XYZ, whatever it is, usually something like, kind of more on the savory side as you're pounding in all the sugar. But yeah, like if you haven't, firmed up something like again, while you're tapering, it's a good time to firm up all those logistic based things, and kind of have all that stuff set. And one thing I will say that can be really beneficial to managing your time is write timelines for things. So there's lots of transiting and moving to different segments of the race. So create timelines for yourself so you know when you're going to be warming up, when you're going to be driving to the new venue, when you have to like all that stuff was stuff I used to do through these stage races because it kept me on a schedule. So I could actually be like, no, I don't have time to do this interview or I don't have time to go for lunch because I have to do this on my schedule. It kind of kept me somewhat accountable to like the goals and tasks that I needed to do. So yeah, any questions there? But yeah, like I think pretty simple stuff. And yeah, so again, yeah. So yeah, final thoughts. It's easy to like, show up at BC Bike Race. You see all these people in like super fast bikes and super cool kits. And it's easy to kind of get goaded into being like, well, that person who's way better in my age group does this longer warm up or bigger cool downs at the end of events and whatever. Like my thing is if you want success, trust your process, trust the training that you've done and trust like that you've done enough. Like again, I'll go back to saying it because I can never say this enough. You will not get fitter 10 days out from your race. So be smart. And again, if you have questions like on taper sets, like feel free to reach out. Um, Ride smart, ride smooth, and again, soak it up. Like I honestly like bike racing is meant to be fun. Like yes, it's a hard effort and whatever, but like don't take it so serious that you don't have fun. And again, I know lots of pros that will say that as well. Like it's fun. And it's, yeah, there's serious moments. But we all enjoy the biking for all the benefits it gives us mentally and physically. So yeah, I'll leave it there. We've got, time for questions. So if anyone's got any burning questions, fire away, either unmute or open up the chat. Unless I did such a great job that no one
I had
had.
a quick question
Yeah, go
on
ahead, Scott.
calorie intake one more time. Um, so tomorrow I have a 24-mile race, and like just trying to think of, I'm going to have two bottles on me. The nutrition I have in the bottle is something I'm used to. I like it a lot. But then as far as like other calories to take in, you kind of just go on a 15 to 20 minute.
Yeah, I mean, basically, like, yeah, mountain biking always has some little, like, yeah, there's certain times where it's like, oh, maybe I'm not going to be able to get a drink in for 25 minutes, but then it's like, well, I'm going to take in a little bit extra sooner. You're just trying to maximize all the time getting fuel in, and then with the general, like, every 15 minutes you should be drinking, so that basically your bottle is done in the hour, and that bottle should contain anywhere from like 300 to 400 calories. Maybe your drink mix has only 250 calories in a 500 ml or 750 ml bottle, but you've got a gel to supplement or
Okay,
something like that.
cool. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just speaking to like that, like I just try to have things that you're not going to choke on. Like I can't reiterate that enough of like I once tried like I was sponsored by Cliff Bar for a long time and I loved blocks for when I was training. But blocks to me were scary while racing because you're breathing super hard and the potential of like lodging one of those down into your windpipe while your body's consuming lots of oxygen to me is like a very scary thought. So have a gel that you can slurp and like sure you might put some down the windpipe, but it's not going to block it. that's just my food for thought. Like people will make these little like energy balls and stuff like that. Great if you're going to get off the bike and eat it, but if you're planning on riding and eating, keep to fuel that like you're when you're in higher zones and like intaking as much air as possible, you're not going to choke. So, yeah, good question. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a question. Tires.
Yeah,
If it's a
sure.
bit, if it's like I haven't been very particular with tires. I ride tires at work where I live here in Ottawa.
Hmm.
But what do you? This is I've never really changed tires. I've done the race a couple times. What do you recommend?
Yeah, I think a good all-around tire that provides good traction, would be like kind of an ardent race, is a Maxxis tire. Specialized makes a tire called Fast Track, which is what my go-to was. Some of the main points though to tire purchasing, because some bike shops you'll go to, they'll be like, "Oh, you're doing an XC race? Here's the super lightweight Pinner XC tire." And I mean that in terms of the sidewall and the construction of it. My suggestion is always go for something that's got like a grid casing, or I think Maxis called it TR something. Just ask the bike shop to be like, I want the one that's got sidewall protection, that's a bit beefier of a tire. Like I've been sponsored by Specialized for a long time now, and I'm a marketing manager always wanted me to race um, BC bike race on S Works tires. And I always had to tell him, I'm like, dude, I'm 6'3", 175 pounds. I'm gonna destroy that tire. And anytime I tried to train with them to be like, oh, maybe I will, I would destroy them. So I always had to go with their kind of beefier casing. And again, it's rugged out in BC, so I suggest like everyone take that on, because there's nothing worse than puncturing, and it's already, your potential to have a puncture is definitely there. But if you got new tires with a good casing on them in terms of like how thick that sidewall, and yeah, it adds weight. But I'd rather not puncture than ride with a little extra weight.
And you find the Ardent have good like the Maxxis Ardent are decent for sidewall?
The main thing you just have to like, they all are labeled different, so you can buy all these different tire treads in, say, the super lightweight, or I'm just blanking on what they call, like what Maxxis used to call their sidewall. I know Specialized is called grid casing, where you know that you're getting like a more beefy sidewall. So you just have to lean on the bike shop a bit to be like, hey, I just want to make sure I'm getting a good casing. Oh, yes, EXO. Thanks, Kevin. It's called EXO, and then EXO plus. And then there's like, for, yeah, that's kind of what you're looking at on the Maxxis side. And then I'm not as familiar with other brands, what they're doing, because I've kind of ridden Maxxis before and then have been Specialized for like 6 years now.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I heavily suggest that. And again, I just think like you don't want to go such light tread that, it doesn't feel like you've got control and grip. So that's where it's like on the meteor end. And then if we're talking about rain, some tires I like for rain was Maxxis Forecaster. And again, I would have it in the EXO protection, or on the Specialized side, I would use ground control in their grid casing as well. So those are some good options in terms of like a race tire, and then it's like, oh, it's monsoon pouring rain, and then you can do different combinations where you're like, well, it's kind of dry. I'm gonna go potentially a rain tire up front, like with more grip, so that could be your forecaster or your ground control, and then a faster rolling in the rear, because the rear is kind of like that's not as much as your steering control. So yeah, good question.
Thank you.
Anyone else got anything that they're thinking of?
Hey, sorry, I've got a question. Video's
Sure.
not working, but
No
back
worries.
to belabor the calorie thing. So if the gels are only like 1 or 150 calories, and you're going to be out there for 4 hours, I mean, and with the racing you've done in the past, like how many supplements or gels or bars, or like what are you carrying? Like it sounds like you're going to have to carry, 20 items to eat. which is
Well,
like
so
quite a bit.
ideally in your bottles, that's where the
Yeah.
bulk of your calories can be. So a lot of these companies, like Morton's or Scratch that have a high carb mix, like my Morton stuff, that bottle's worth 320 calories. So that's getting hydration and the carbohydrate right in a bottle. And then I'm having gels in my pocket. And I, again, also have gels for like the potential of like if I'm out on the course longer because of a flat, I have more gels for that. So, that's the thing. It's just you want to break it down into like what I would do is have 500 calories per hour. So
Yeah.
if I felt like I was going to be out on the course for 3 hours, I have 1,500 worth of calories. And sometimes depends on the course or whatever. But sometimes it would be I'd have like one of my sachet packs just tucked in my jersey pocket because it's like I didn't want to carry all that. So I would stop at an aid station, pour the water in, and put in another hydration mix. And sometimes that again is going to flex based on the temperature outside and the weather and stuff. But yeah.
Um, Thanks.
Yeah, hopefully that helps. But yeah. So Monica, you have a question. Is it true there's only one aid station with a chance to fill water each day? Worried about running out of liquid. Is this in regards to BCBR, Monica?
Yeah. Yeah, it
Okay.
is.
Um, that seems familiar to me. From yeah, when I've done it. So if you're worried about running out of fluid slash calories prior to getting to the aid station, and again, a lot of smaller frame bikes usually don't like if you see this picture here, I've got two bottles sitting on that bike and I could put two 750 ml bottles on it. Some mountain bikes only have room for one, and some smaller frames really only fit a 500 ml bottle. That's where I would suggest getting a hydration vest. Specifically, a brand that makes really good ones, and I have no sponsorship with them. I just think they make really nice stuff. Is Uswe USWE, I'm pretty sure. Like I got one when I was racing longer events and super comfy. You can buy them in lots of different liter sizes. Like likely you'd probably just buy the, liter or 1.5 and you can kind of fill that with fluid. So yeah, that helps stretch it out. But yeah, anyone else have any other questions? Okay. Anyone last calls? Well, nonetheless, if you do have any questions that come up, reach out to me on whatever platform that works best for you. And yeah, thanks for coming. And I look forward to seeing people at BCBR and some of the other events around. I'll be there kind of the last 3 days of BCBR this year. So yeah, happy racing and taper. Do a good one and look forward to seeing everyone at the race. But thanks again.